American concert pianist Ivan Ilić has played concerts all around the world in venues like Carnegie Hall, the Wigmore Hall and the Glenn Gould Studio. His recordings have attracted many accolades and awards, and I'm delighted that he's taken the time today to join me here at Steinway Hall in London for one of my classical conversations. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's lovely to chat to you here today.
Likewise.
I'm going to start by talking about your music education, how you started playing, what age were you, why you started, and do you come from a musical family? Always ask everyone that.
Well, I think that, like many musicians, my family appreciates music without actually being professional musicians. The most important part of that surrounding, I would say, context is just the fact that my parents took me to concerts all the time.
Right.
And so music was something that was accepted and encouraged and of value, which is something which I think is becoming more rare today. Parents that would not only spend time with their children, first of all, it's kind of a shocker, isn't it? It used to happen.
Yes.
But also take them to things and just enjoy them together. So we would drive to San Francisco for 45 minutes and we would talk about what we were about to see, kind of, the anticipation would build up. And then we would go to these events and afterwards we would either fall asleep on the way home or talk about it, sometimes the next morning. So it was kind of...
It was an event.
Yeah, it was an event.
Yeah.
It was very important. And we would buy tickets to see, Jean-Yves Thibaudet or Ivo Pogorelic play Tchaikovsky concerto for 3 weeks before, and then I'd be thinking about that, and we'd hear it on the radio, and it was exciting for me. Yeah.
And so, which teacher then do you think was most influential in your development? Which was the most important person to help you on your pianistic journey?
My first teacher, who I'm still in touch with, his name is Paul Fink, and he, in the town where I grew up, Palo Alto, which is near San Francisco. He's quite a sought-after piano teacher, and I think that personally I'm kind of terrified of teaching because I think it's a tremendous responsibility.
Yes.
And also I feel that when you teach somebody from the beginning, it's even more of a responsibility because you are their link to music. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So all of their associations, positive or negative, will be a reflection of their relationship with you. And I've had so many people tell me, I loved music, but I had this terrible teacher, and I just stopped playing because of that.
Yes.
And it's sad, isn't it?
Very.
So I had a teacher for a long time, like the first 10 years, from 6 to 16, who was just very open-minded, let me play whatever I wanted. I was playing movie soundtracks, I transcribed a piano thing from a rap song at the time. I could do whatever I wanted. And he was very, very encouraging and supportive of whatever I felt like doing.
It's great.
It is great, and I think that that's wonderful because I could have, let's say I didn't become a musician, I would have just loved music forever because it would have been just a positive experience. And so I was lucky. I was really, really, really lucky. So I didn't have this really strict format for pedagogical format, but I think that's okay. I think that sometimes we think you have to play the Chopin etudes by the time you're 14 and record them for EMI, otherwise your career will never go anywhere, and that's absurd. It's so stupid. This isn't the Olympics.
No.
This isn't gymnastics. We don't
It's an
have to do it.
old-fashioned idea now.
It's very well. Luckily, it's becoming old-fashioned. Thank
Yes.
goodness. I think that more and more people are realizing that that's there are people that live that path, but there are lots that don't, and sometimes it's probably more enjoyable not to. I think
Yes.
maybe that's why I feel that.
So how did you develop your technique?
I'm still developing my technique. I think that the best thing that can happen to you in terms of technique is to have an insecurity. In other words, to believe that your technique is not good. Then you will continue to improve.
Yes.
If you have a friend that plays faster than you and more accurately, that will be a good thing because then you will be pushed to continually, strive.
Yes.
Whereas if at any point with piano technique, if you think that you're doing okay, then that's when, it's kind of like they say businesses are always either growing or shrinking. I think piano technique is always either getting better or getting worse. So if you're playing a lot of slow music, if you're not challenging yourself, it's dangerous. So basically, I practice technique the same way today that I did 20 years ago. I'm just trying to play harder and harder pieces. Okay. And I'm trying to play them better, and I'm trying to be very self-critical about things I can improve. I mean, there's certain things, people talk about technique, I think there are certain objective characteristics like, how fast the metronome mark is, or how many notes am I screwing up out of 100? You know, you could calibrate those things, but obviously there are a lot of other things. There's control of the sound.
Mm.
There's control of your mental state, you know. How concentrated are you? Is your mind wandering when you're playing? The audience can hear it.
That's quite amazing, actually. Yes, that's often forgotten.
Yeah, that's technique. I mean, that's, if you can't do that, I mean, if you can play all the notes perfectly at home, but when you're in front of the public, you're not there, it's worthless. Mm. So, yeah, just continual improvement, I guess.
So you studied maths and music at the University of California. What point did you say, I've got to become a pianist? Because you've taken two subjects to a high level there.
Yeah. I knew almost immediately, as soon as when I was in college and I had the opportunity to go to different classes and things, mm-hmm. I have this really big problem, which is I'm very curious about things. So all of a sudden I had like anthropology classes and history of art classes, and I was torn in all directions on the one hand. And on the other hand, every morning at 8 o'clock I was at the practice rooms when it opened. And it wasn't difficult, I just wanted to be there. So I suppose that it was natural in the sense that what I really wanted was to become as good as possible. And that didn't prevent me from doing other things, but I suppose that when you're doing that, then that's a good sign that that's what you should be doing.
That's right, yeah, yes. So your recording of Debussy Preludes has had a lot of accolades. What attracts you to this music?
Well, the Preludes, which I recorded, there was one thing I'm very interested in, which is the first book of Preludes, 1909-1910, is the sound world that we associate with Debussy. So it's kind of like it is the iconic repertoire for French music. All those sounds, you know, all these parallel chords and everything. That's what we think about when we think about French music. And then a couple of years later, 1912, 1913, when he wrote the second book, he's completely changed his language. And it's like influenced by Stravinsky, the ballets he was hearing in Paris. And it's much more complex harmonically. And I love that. I find that so interesting. You know, like he wrote both books of preludes in a very short time, which was rare for him. And when you put the two books together on a CD, it's about 75 minutes of music. And you have like two different people, really.
Yes.
And I find that so interesting. I'm always interested by you know, kind of these road to Damascus moments where artists change. You know, they've done something, like his first book of preludes was completely self-sufficient world, and he could have just stayed doing that for the rest of his life. And for some reason, he didn't. He moved to something else. And I can relate to that. I'm sure you can as well. You have moments when you, all of a sudden in 6 months' time, you're different. And I just find that change very, very interesting.
So which other composers do you really enjoy playing, would you say?
Well, I played Godowsky for a long time, 3 or 4 years. You know, it just takes a long time to learn it. It's so difficult, and I found that interesting because the melodies are familiar. The Chopin, you know, all, as pianists, we know them so well, and this was a way to play that music without playing that music, the Chopin.
That was my next question, actually. What made you decide to record all the Chopin etudes for left hand by Godowsky? It's very unusual.
Yeah, it was a challenge. Definitely. I wanted to know if I could get away with it, really. And also I was curious, it just seemed like a good idea, and I was surprised that no one had done it.
But you've attracted a lot of attention on YouTube, haven't you? It's a lot of
I've been lucky that people have been interested in it. It's quite obscure repertoire in a way. It's one of these things that's paradoxical, isn't it? Because it's both obscure and famous for being obscure. So it's like, you know, famous for being not famous. I mean, something I'd be interested in doing more of, if I was to teach or if I was to do master classes, things like that. I think it's really important to develop your left-hand technique because most people have weak left hands.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I did as well before this. No question I felt the weakness, you know, at moments in certain repertoire. I just, you know, the left hand wouldn't sing, it wasn't as free, it was a little bit tight.
I bet it's fantastic now, though.
It's no longer a problem. In fact, my left hand is there's kind of a battle now when I play repertoire. Like, who am I listening to more? Just working on your weaknesses, I suppose, is always very, very interesting if you're comfortable enough with yourself to do that. It's not always easy, right?
No.
To admit to yourself what you're bad at and improve that. Most people play to their strengths, which is normal, I suppose.
Yeah.
But long term, I don't think you make as much progress.
Your next project is the American composer Morton Feldman.
Yeah.
What attracted you to this music, and how does this come about? It's another interesting composer.
Yeah. First of all, it's the total opposite of Godowski. So, Godowski was one hand,
Yes.
It was fast, it was Chopin, so, very traditional in a way, harmonic language. Morton Feldman is slow, always quiet, two hands, abstract, contemporary. And I think what I learned the most actually with Godowski is how to talk to the public about strange music. So they would ask questions, and I would have to tell the story why this music was written. And with Feldman, that difficulty is still there, but it's so much more difficult to bring contemporary music to a normal audience.
Yes.
And I love that. I think that's really, really interesting. So I'm starting to do it now, and it's so much more rewarding to bring something to people that they never would have liked, and they discover it. It's kind of like when I was 13, I was in high school or whatever, and I went to lunch with a friend, and he showed me sushi. And if I was embarrassed to refuse in front of him because he was my friend, and he was eating sushi like it was the most normal thing in the world, and I was like, oh my god, this raw fish. And I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So thanks to him, Brian, if you're out there somewhere.
You now enjoy sushi.
I eat sushi like twice a week, right? And maybe if I hadn't gone to that lunch, I wouldn't.
No.
And the idea that I can do that for somebody is, I love that. That's amazing. Because we all have our routines, I suppose.
It's easy to stay safe.
Yeah, it is. It is easy. And also I find that Morton Feldman's music, because it's quite slow and quiet, it might be easier for people who don't normally listen to contemporary music to get into. Because sometimes when you have these loud noises that are quite aggressive, people just say, oh, I don't want to, that doesn't interest me, it's ugly, it's grotesque. Whereas with this music, you can't say that.
No.
So in a way, it might be kind of a middle ground. It's like a gateway drug to Boulez or something else, I don't know. I guess the other thing is that the pieces are quite long. So there's a piece that I recorded which is 75 minutes long. In one movement, there's never a break.
It's in one movement.
It's one movement, yeah. So playing that means that you necessarily change the concert ritual. You can't just walk in and play the 75-minute music, without explaining it, or the context has to be different. The people have to know what they're in for. The other day I played a shorter piece, 30 minutes, so pretty long. We put candles in a private room, and I thought it was interesting. It was lovely.
The whole experience.
Yeah, it was the whole experience.
Yeah. Theatrical.
Exactly, very theatrical. Yeah. It's funny that you should use that word. I'm interested in theatre.
Well, my next question is, tell us about your acting career, because I noticed you act as well, and you're the second pianist I've met in the last kind of few weeks as also an actor. It's interesting.
It is interesting. I'd be curious to know more about other people who have had this experience. I'm very lucky. It's fun to do that. It certainly it improves your confidence. It's nice to see yourself on the screen. It's a little bit strange. You certainly see all your faults, your physical faults that you weren't necessarily aware of, which I'm sure we'll see later on in this video.
I was going to say, well, I've got quite used to that now.
All right, yeah, good for you. It's good for the ego, isn't it? It puts you right in your place.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah, I met a couple of people. I've been trying to meet people who are not musicians because I find it's more enriching. So I was lucky to meet people that had film projects, short film projects, at exactly the right moment. One of them wrote a screenplay for me to play Godowski, a story, why would someone play with their left hand? So he made up a story, and that's the film.
That's superb.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it was a great experience for me.
And where can we see this?
Well, it's going to be on YouTube soon now because it was doing the round of festivals, and therefore it had to be excluded from online. But he gave me the go-ahead now, 2 years after the release, that it's okay. So hopefully on YouTube soon. And the other one was with a visual artist. And I suppose, I'm very interested in visual things, which is ironic because I'm a musician. But I find I've learned a lot from the visual arts, just being interested in it. Also, I find that visual artists talk about things much more. They're comfortable with the abstract.
Yeah.
They're comfortable with the context of everything. In fact, I'm always surprised to see how many visual artists know so much about music, and musicians know nothing about the visual arts. Morton Feldman was another musician he knew all of these New York painters like Robert Rauschenberg, William de Kooning, Jackson Pollock. I mean, he was involved in his circles. And how many musicians do we know that can write or talk about the visual arts as if they are a curator? I mean, he did that, and I really admire that, and it's amazing.
Which venues have you loved playing in? What's your favourite venue?
My favorite venues in general are venues where the piano is horrible. And, you know, it's where you kind of, you arrive, you're on tour and you arrive, and you're shocked because it's not at all the way you imagined it. Once I had like an upright piano, and I arrived and my mouth was agape. Because the organizer was there and he was like, so, you know, how do you like the piano? And I was, what do you say? I mean, you're in situations where you just have to make it work.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I find the acoustic more important than the piano in general, and also the audience. So on Sunday, for example, at this concert, at the festival, there was a really, really quiet audience, and they were so quiet that I was terrified. I thought they didn't like it. You know, why are they so quiet? Are they asleep? What's going on? I couldn't believe it.
But we should say that's the It's All About Piano Festival.
Yes.
In South Kensington.
South Kensington, yeah. It's a wonderful festival on many levels. I suppose that the experiences that you have are not related to the name brand of the hall, or even the quality of the instrument, or any of those things.
That's true.
It has to do also with where you are in life. Maybe you've played a piece 30 times and the 31st is the magical one. Also what you experience outside the concert hall. You know, I like to talk to the audience after concerts. And sometimes what people say to me afterwards makes me kind of re-experience what I'm experiencing it through their emotions. And they'll say something about how amazing something was, let's say, which, you know, I didn't think was. But as a result, it makes me feel good about myself. You know, I was able to provide something that was special to someone, maybe that they'll remember. So that turns out to be more important than me saying, oh, this is the most incredible piano that's so new that it still has the plastic on the pedals, you know? I mean, those are wonderful, but after the first couple of years, you get, you know, you kind of, that's not what makes it memorable.
So what exciting plans have you got coming up for the rest of the year?
Lots. Where to begin? The first thing is this CD of Morton Feldman's work, which is called For Benita Marcus. It's a gorgeous piece of music, and I have no idea how I'm going to tour with it or explain it. It's a big challenge. I'm writing about it right now for the text of the CD. In 2 weeks, I'll be in Geneva for a project with the Geneva School of Art and Design. I've been invited there for a workshop, and they want to publish something. So I recorded another piece by Feldman earlier, a half-hour piece. I didn't know what to do with it, so I'm going to publish that. We did videos together. Those will be a DVD, CD thing. There'll be images, texts. So I'm putting that together, and it's just really fun to do that. It's fun to do things. I mean, the recording is very important to me, but it's important to have, I mean, I'm hoping it will be a beautiful object that I can be proud of with, you know, something that people would like to just hold and touch and open, and they'll be interested in the whole story behind it. It's not just going to be a CD where, you know, what happens when you give someone a CD? They open the CD, they put it on the CD player, they're reading the notes while they're listening. They're not really listening. You know, maybe they'll listen for 10 minutes if you're lucky, then they'll like go put something else on.
Yes.
Yeah, changing that experience is exciting.
So what does playing the piano mean to you?
Playing the piano to me is my way of accessing music. So to me, sound has always been the thing that compels me the most emotionally. You know, like if I was to think about something that would be the most effective way of getting me to cry, let's say, it would be sound. It would be music. And to me, just the very humble, everyday practicing, listening to myself, thinking to myself, that sounds horrible. How can I improve it? Doing that every day is like, it keeps me grounded. It just makes me feel good about myself. So in that sense, music allows me to be comfortable. And of course, the idea that you can share that with other people. I mean, there are, like with mathematics, when I was studying mathematics, I was able to have a similar kind of it's very humble. Mathematics, you read a page and you sit there, you try to understand it, and you read it and you reread it and you reread it, and then if you're lucky, at some point you get it and you feel so incredible. It just makes you feel so good to be able to get it. But you can't really share that in mathematics. I mean, you can talk about it with somebody who gets it also, or your girlfriend who doesn't get it at all, and that's not very satisfying. But music, you can, not only can you have this access to work and pleasure, it's kind of like eating a wonderful meal for 4 hours practicing. It's wonderful. I love that. But you can also share it. And what more do you want in life, really? Doing something beautiful and being able to share it. I think, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like the luckiest person alive. It's just, I can't imagine doing anything else that would give me so much pleasure. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.